Hello and welcome. This is my promised eclipse video, and we are here meeting about the eclipse that is taking place on October 2nd, which is today. And many of you who follow me know that I generally wait until very close to the astrological event to publish a video. I do not care about the likes and the views. Um, as much as I care about the accuracy and transmitting from the atmosphere that the astrology is creating. And I've had many, many messages, both like through just the regular iPhone and on social media with people talking about just how grave, how consequential, how sort of like dark or, this time feels, especially because 2 weeks ago we were sitting in quite a different energy. We had the eclipse in Pisces and things felt quite lifted at that time. They were a little bit more dreamy and, Pisces can be a really beautiful energy. And now we are in the last eclipse, the last South Node eclipse in Libra until like the 2040s. And so, this is a consequential energy. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about, like, before I bring up the chart or anything else, why it feels like a time of consequence, right? And I'm going to bring in some readings about the tarot and talk about the influences of the South Node and things like that, just so that we kind of like fully understand. So, I think the first thing I want to say, like as I was preparing for this video, it came into my awareness. I'm not myself Jewish at all, but there's a lot of Kabbalistic influences inside of astrology. And I've always been fascinated with like I'm Christian and I grew up as a Christian and I've got a pretty solid like biblical foundations, like 101, right? Like that's it. I haven't gone on to study it in depth, but my entire childhood and developmental years were peppered by these books and these stories, and of course we include the Old Testament, and I did in my own kind of study. And so the eclipse is taking place today on Rosh Hashanah, and that feels consequential because the whole world is looking at Israel right now. The conflict that happened in between Gaza and Israel took place in the opening eclipse portal last year with Libra. And so, Rosh Hashanah is thought to be and again, I'm not a Jewish scholar, but I know enough, is thought to be the head of the civil year, right? So it's like the new year for the Jewish tradition. And it is their high holy days in terms of like this being like a day of remembrance. And then it's followed up by Yom Kippur, which is a day of atonement. And what we find like throughout astrology and the Bible is if you overlay astrology onto the Bible, that it becomes a very astrotheological document. Like so much of the zodiac and the biblical year is astrology based, right? And so I believe, if I'm not wrong, that Rosh Hashanah is like dated for the first new moon after the autumnal or the autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere, which makes sense because we have Easter a lot like that for the Christians, in the sense that Easter takes place on the first, I think it's the full moon after the spring eclipse, and then that's also the Passover festival, I believe. I'm not a scholar in terms of these things that I'm bringing up, but what I sense is, Libra is a sign, and so the Jewish tradition does the months a little bit differently. Like in Kabbalah, it's like it's September, October. It's a lunar based kind of calendar. But Libra is uh, a sign of justice, right? And it is the justice card in the tarot, right? And then the justice card is somewhat, in my mind, followed by the judgment card, which is ruled by Pluto and Scorpio. And these are more modern influences. And I have a ton of like tarot, lots of different, like this is tarot, the alchemy of tarot, and this is like the Kabbalistic influences, but I have like tons of tarot resources. And I've been just like thinking about how just incredibly knowledgeable Jewish and Kabbalistic scholars are, and like why this time of year feels so consequential. Why do we start school around this time of year? Well, Virgo is a really important month in terms of supporting us in things like getting administrative processes up. Um, there's the and the fact of organization and logistics, like it all comes online in Libra. We come out of that like expansive Leo portal and into like wanting to put our kind of nose to the ground and study and get things organized. And if you're a parent, you know that starting school is very much like that. There's lots of supplies to buy and papers to get in order and helping your kids get up and running. And then the Libra energy comes in and Libra feels consequential. So beginning with Libra, Libra is a sign that is ruled by Venus, right? And Libra's energies tend to rule like the evening star emanation of Venus. Venus has two kind of like energetic emanations depending on where she is in her cycle. She's got a morning star energy, which is more fiery. It's ruled, I think, by the energies of like the Taurus Aries cusp in a way. Like if you were to think about those two energies put together, it's more imminent, it's more juicy and alive. It's more concerned with this particular human incarnation, whereas the evening star is an like an airier, more transcendent emanation of Venus, and it's more concerned with justice for sure, and with relationship in general, like the external orientation to the world, being a world citizen. What does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to be part of a tribe or a community or a country? What are our responsibilities as citizens, and what values do we hold around being a citizen? Furthermore, like on a more personal level, what are our values around relationship, personal relationships, the covenants we hold inside of personal relationships? We've got Saturn exalted in Libra. And what does that tell us, right? Well, Saturn is a planet that is concerned with fate, right? And he is, in many traditions, considered like a kind of judge. There is a way that he has like a judgment. He's very disciplined. He is associated with the path of ascension, or the idea of taking the narrow path, right? Saturn doesn't let you move forward on a project or move forward in life without having chopped the wood, carried the water, and refined mastery in that area. Another symbol of Libra is the scales, those balancing of the scales. And we first find that in the Egyptian pantheon with the goddess Mat. And this is that idea of celestial or universal balance, how the scales are always kind of in flux, but also trying to be weighed. I want to read just a very short passage from Lee McCloskey's book. We read some from it during the first eclipse, just to give you an idea of really what we're dealing with here. So justice, I'm going to just show you because this is his representation of justice, his illustration. And then, of course, he goes on to write many glorious pages about the archetypal meanings. And I highly recommend this book. This is my favorite tarot book because he includes all of the like Hermetic, Kabbalistic influences. And here he's talking about The Hebrew alphabet is really important in Kabbalah. It is like one of the most exciting languages to study. And even in terms of how it's written and how it's used, it's very intentional. And there's this way that you feel when you're using the Hebrew alphabet, like there is power seeded into the words. It's a lot different than how we use English. And so he's talking about the Hebrew letter Lamed, which is associated with the justice card. It's attributed to this particular path, the path of justice in the Kabbalah. It signifies the ox goad, and is as a symbol, it suggests the prodding action of life force, which guides and impels us towards what we're doing, towards action. So this could be also considered the compelling influence of karma, meaning simply experience, any experience we have. As a verb, lamed signifies to teach or to instruct, and it reveals that most instruction resides within action, what we learn by doing, and the perpetual struggle of trying to achieve harmony and balance amid life's constantly changing circumstances. And so here we kind of establish this idea of karma and its relationship to justice, in the sense that nature is always seeking balance, whether that's through chaos and order being like the two sides. There is just always this universal law that nature is seeking balance. So when we have a storm or a fire, and it wipes out an ecology in some ways, and then that ecology grows back in a more lush and more diverse form, we can see the destruction as nature seeking some kind of balance or some kind of evolutionary regeneration process, right? I don't want to get like too technical here, but even in the story of Mott, and how there's this idea of the feather needing to weigh less than, or the heart needing to weigh less than a feather in order to gain entry into the kingdom or into heaven or the afterlife. Saturn here signifying the narrow path. There's this part of Libra, and then its connection to justice and karma, and the way that nature seeks balance, and the things that happen to us inside of that, being in service to a certain kind of soul refinement, right? Like this is the energy of Libra. And so, and how our relationships tend to be kind of a laboratory of having our soul be reflected back to us. And so for us to understand where we are on our particular path. So if we're feeling disempowered in relationship, or like we can't communicate, or we're not seen, or we're not heard, that can give us an idea of how we're showing up in the world and the things that, we potentially need to work on. Does that make sense? So we've got this kind of like feeling of consequence in the air, like this, there's just something consequential happening right now. It's happening in our own lives, and it's happening all around us by virtue of the sun being here, there being a new moon here, and there being an eclipse. And so I think for a lot of people, that is what they're feeling. They're feeling this sense of like there being karmic consequences for whatever is going on now, be it personal or collective action. The South Node then adds a kind of like a double karmic signature, meaning like the weightiness of that feeling is heightened by virtue of the South Node being here, because the South Node has to do with completing or purging karma, ending things from the past, right? The South Node always signifies like the past, whereas the North Node, where our last eclipse took place, signifies the future. And so I think for me, that's just phenomenally interesting. And then you bring in that like that Jewish influence of the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Um, it starts to be very interesting because the ruler of the eclipse, which is Venus, right? Because she rules Libra, we then look to where is Venus in the sky, and she happens to be in Scorpio, which takes on the energy of judgment. And so I also wanted to take just a second to read a little bit about judgment as well from the Alchemy of Tarot book, because I thought that it encapsulated this energy pretty well. So judgment, right, which is it's part of the energy of Scorpio, where the ruler of this eclipse happens to be, which means it's intoning the feeling sense of this eclipse. So I guess I'll show you this. I hope we don't have too much glare here. So we see Pluto, the king there, and then Thoth showing up as Mercury in the image. And so what it says is this is the personality of Pluto, just to kind of give us an idea. Here we have the sorcerer, to whom Mercury, the magician, the ruler of Virgo, so the sign before Libra, plays apprentice. Pluto understands the secret forces of the world and how to manipulate them. He commands total power and knowledge of the nature of existence, and his amoral lack of concern for the dualities of black and white, evil and good, or right and wrong, it horrifies us. He eliminates that which is no longer useful with the daunting singleness of purpose and has no time for emotional relationships or idle chit chat. It's fitting that this planet was named after the Roman god of the underworld, for he rains down hell upon us in order to restore us to heaven. He is not unlike the two-faced god Janus of the Roman pantheon. He is the god of gates and doorways, Janus. And with one face representing evil and the other face representing good. And so they're talking about the dual nature here. And then they go on to talk about Persephone and the movements of Pluto, with Pluto retrograding 6 months of the year and going forward 6 months of the year, Persephone being in the underworld 6 months of the year, and rising to the surface and then being on the surface of the earth for the other 6 months. There's this kind of sense of duality that we get with Pluto. We also get it with Libra, with the scales. Oh, I've got a kitty cat here. Sorry. We might have a cat running across the screen. Sorry, babes. And what this is kind of showing us is, again, I personally think, like in the most distilled way, it's showing us the relationship between chaos and order, right? And order being like there is some semblance of control, some predictability about what might happen, some civility, right? There's this sense of order. And then chaos being the upending of that. And then how Pluto, with the scorpionic energies, is intoning the world with the realization that kind of order, in a sense, is an illusion, right? That like yeah, I was just telling a friend, on a side note about when you have a child die, that it really upends your sense of order in the world, that like you get initiated into your own relationship to control, because you realize that really nothing is inside of your control. And so the forces of Pluto are like that. They are relentless and amoral in a sense. I'm going to pause this really quick and take my cat. Sorry about that. The forces of Pluto are relentless in and amoral, right? And sorry, I know I just said that, but in the sense that, you know, we really do have it. And I see the beliefs and the thought lines that run through my own psyche around, if I'm good things will happen to me. And, like, so I avoid being bad. So only good things happen to me. This is a very kind of dogmatic way of thinking. It kind of reveals the kind of childhood I had, and like the growing up at the church, and that kind of like teaching of karma, like um, I will draw good things to me, but that is a very juvenile, um, unnuanced way of looking at the world. And of course, that is not true. And that's what the forces of Pluto reveal to us, right? I want to read a little bit more because then she goes on, the author, to bullet point a few things about the energy of Scorpio, thus, therefore, where Venus is, therefore, the energy that is intoning this eclipse. Okay, so understanding that we are still talking about the atmosphere we find ourselves in the eclipse. So, Pluto, she says, is the purifying fire that burns away all the refuse in order to bring the truth to light. It exerts tremendous pressure on the whole of our lives and our bodies and on humanity as a whole to transform us into the diamond that we're meant to be. She rules the need for change, purification, elimination, regeneration, crisis, and renewal. Pluto also rules the underworld and therefore governs anything that is deliberately hidden, such as criminality, secrets, pornography, psychological warfare, espionage. Pluto behaves amorally and unethically. Thus, it influences us to act without concern for rules, authority, or consequences. And it also rules our darker urges and compulsions. And so there's this way with Pluto, not because it intends to uh, rule amorally, but like it's outside the bounds of human morals. And human morals and virtues are something that are strongly governed by Libra. And so, like, when we're sitting in the Libra energy and the sun is here, there's this focus on like what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what are our values, especially as pertains to the collective and the world and other people. What are the values that I hold for society in particular? And so when we've got this destructive or amoral force that acts outside the bounds of that, we're gonna feel that, especially when it's Venus who's intoning that, because she's so related to our feeling navigation, if that makes sense. um Pluto rules the final decision, judgment, sentence, or determination of a matter without appeal. And it also rules plutocracies, taxes, exorbitant amounts of money. So something we might see come up as a result of the eclipse is, you know, plutocrats being, revealed for shady dealings, tax evasions, things like that. And Pluto, just so you know, it's not so much as a personal planet as it is a planet of generations, mass society, and large populations. And so if Pluto is touching something during this eclipse for you, it generally is talking about how something in the collective might affect you. I don't like how scared people get of Pluto. It's really a planet that is seeking to restore us, right? Um, so I want to talk about the judgment card really quick. So the judgment path goes from Kether to Tipura. And I don't expect you to know what that means. I'm just telling you because it's here. And it is the influence of the supreme and concealed Father of all becoming manifest in the Son of glory and suffering. And they are identical and integral to the path of transformation. And the card, this is the judgment card now. We're not talking about the justice card, is attributed to the Hebrew letter Shin, which is the true fire of the spirit and the progenitor of the sun behind the sun. And it is the cleansing powers of fire. And so the influence of this path scours the world, causes the dead to rise in resurrection of pure spirit and the regeneration of matter. It passes through um, the path of Hokmah and Bina, which means it overcomes death. And it's the path of the everlasting one entering manifestation, and it represents the absolute and universal tradition of the golden age. And there's this way that what Pluto does is reveal the truth. And for me, the philosopher's stone that we talk about in alchemy, the thing that, everybody's searching for, really is representative of the truth that everything aligns to, or the truth that destroys everything that is untrue. Hence, again, why the energy feels so consequential. So now I've been talking in a very kind of like esoteric fashion and, not really giving any anecdotes, but like, eclipses in general tend to be a moment of pivot or refinement for our life path. We could call them cosmic edit points where we're asked to make a change, right? And a lot of times that change is brought in through cosmic or universal powers versus or synchronicity versus like a change by our own will, right? And so again, I think that that adds to, the sense that people have been texting me, and I can feel it as well, that the energy is both, it's consequential and it is again beyond our control, right? And Pluto's powers, his fires, um, represent, like the kind of power that's forged in the dark. So we've got Martian power, or like an Aries power, which is the sign that is opposite of this eclipse, really talking about how we exert our own will. In my cosmology, Mars rules the solar plexus. So the will of the person, how we use that, how we wield our own authority in the world, how we can have power over or dominate, our own reality, other people, make things go our way. And there's nothing wrong with this kind of power. We need it as humans. It's the power of the solar plexus. It's the power of the person. It is the power of the divine spark, Aries, in action. Pluto is the power that is forged in the dark, in the sense that it is like when everything is stripped away from us and all of the impurities have been given to the alchemical fires, and we have surrendered so deeply to the will of this all father, right? Or the universe or the cosmos. What arises, the resurrection, who we walk out of the underworld as when we have no fucks left to give, right? And not in a bad way, but it's like all of the false constructs that we were attached to, all of the attachments to ways of being or the outcomes. Like, to give you an anecdote, like imagine you're a married woman with a family, right? And so there's this certain expectation that you'll be married and raising a family and stewarding the family and stewarding the children through adulthood, married to your partner. Your partner will be with you on your deathbed. And then a death happens or a divorce happens. And then all of the sudden, you find yourself thrust into, a personal underworld of some kind. And the attachment to that future, those outcomes, all of those things, that person, all of that has to be given to the alchemical fire for you to emerge victorious and still be on a evolutionary soul path. I mean, what happens when we're in a personal underworld? We either resurrect ourselves. This is Pluto, the scorpion that crawls on the earth, transforming into the eagle, or that path of the phoenix who rises from the ashes. We either transform or die. For the woman who stays stuck on a path of resentment and anger and kind of like boiling under the surface rage at having been wronged or upset or betrayed, which is something that Scorpio rules, this kind of like sense of being betrayed and the mm, the fire of the scorned woman, although there's nothing wrong with having that and wielding that consciously, when we stay in it, it doesn't allow the surrender to the alchemical transformation that Pluto wants to have happen. And so, I wanted to begin our video. I know it was kind of long, really kind of setting the stage for how consequential things feel right now, and why, if you feel like there is kind of a menacing sense of judgment hanging around, what I really think might be a beautiful orientation to this eclipse is to borrow from the Jewish lineage a type of um, atonement and purification ritual just for the soul, right? Like, look at and honor what is there. Certainly themes of betrayal, degradation, places where we've been harmed or violated inside of relationship, been treated in a way that is wrong, been hurt, abused, all of those things. Not that we personally need to atone for them, but we need to honor what's there, the feelings that are there. Um, and then atonement, I think, it's different than just asking for forgiveness. It's kind of like, if I understand it right, and this was explained to me years ago by someone, and I'm going to paraphrase it. And so, but atonement is really like laying down our lives like as a sacrifice or on an altar and asking God to purify us. So it's not like we're saying sorry, but we're essentially um, laying down the vessel of impurifications. And, and I know I feel very religious in this talk, almost dogmatic, but I think there's a way that this could be light and beautiful. Um, it's in a sense like a surrender, right? Like, all of the ways that when we have been violated in relationship or, betrayed and hurt, there is a primal animal part of us, and this is not a wrong part, right, that has these really big visceral responses. And if we were an animal, it'd be perfectly acceptable, but because of how we've been conditioned by society, and we are citizens and we live in this civil contract, oftentimes we don't actually get to let those responses run all the way through us, and so we suppress them. And the suppression of those things often kind of curdles inside of us, and it tends to manifest as like maladaptive behaviors, maladaptive ways of showing up, like in relationship. It just happened to me the other day. Someone asked me to do something, and the way they asked it landed weird, and I could see um, all of my like former wounding and the constellation of behaviors that have stemmed from those wounds, right, come out and be like, oh, like try to make it a red flag, try to make it like there was something sinister going on there, right? But that's really a result of my past. I also had an argument with my ex, and it was in and around the same time. It wasn't even really an argument. Like, he just was being who he is, and I don't like it, right? I don't like that particular manifestation of him. It feels violating to me. And I could see how I responded, and I could see all of the different, how it activated all of the different wounds, because I have had a lack of really appropriate boundaries. And so, and this is a thing with Libra, like all of the places we people please, or we adapt or adjust ourselves to make other people happy. And in this case, it was like I'm needing to feed his ego, and I don't want to do that anymore. And I know I can pacify it, like the anger and the fire in him, but I just don't want to anymore. And it feels in a way like a violation. And that really activated what I would call like my inner kind of swamp creature, this thing that feels shackled in a way to the underworld and needs to be liberated, right? And so I think one of the beautiful things we could do with this eclipse, being that it's a south node eclipse, and so it's this offering of karmic contracts that can come to a completion, is that we can, you know, make ourselves an altar or create like a really beautiful like herbal bath for yourself, and just ask spirit to purify you of what is ready to go, the things that shackle you to the plutonic realms, the underworld, the unhealthy manifestations. We've got Lilith sitting right on the south node or right on the eclipse of this. Sorry, she's right on the sun and moon, right? So that's like the eclipse pathway. She's right there, and she has the moniker of the mother of demons. And I often think about when we're dealing with Lilith type energies, that like when we're wounded by love, right? Like that the intention is innocent, and love is there, and we're wounded inside of that. We're hurt, somebody we love hurts us. um, and then we don't have the ability to really process that because it's stunted either by societal expectations of how we behave, or we're too young and we can't hold ourselves through processing that type of thing, that it kind of curdles inside of us, and it can come out in really dangerous, unhealthy, and honestly self-sabotaging ways. It can be very disempowering, and so it looks like power when it comes out as like rageful and angry, but it's not conscious. And in its unconsciousness, it will burn down relationships, burn down your life, things like that. And so it's not true power. It's more like a manifestation of a demon, not conscious energy. And so I don't know if that's the right words to use, the manifestation of a demon, but like an inner demon coming out and taking over, right? Um, and so the atonement can be like a ritual like that, to be asking spirit to purify us. I mean, certainly Libra energy. I always talk about Virgo being like the energy of perfection, and how we hold ourselves to standards of perfection, and Libra being more the place of purification, where we archetypally project like God onto different things, and we want to be in relationship with those things, but we don't see that we're actually living in the 3D human realm, and that nothing is really perfect. There isn't really an actual manifestation of God here, aside from the God that is not manifest, the God that is ineffable. And so, it can be a place where we can get really bogged down by purity consciousness, like expecting the pure thing to show up, and then having our expectations dashed when a person shows up in their humanity. And this is really, like an exalted and shadow side of Libra. And for me, the exalted side is seeing people in their humanity and giving people spaciousness to be both light and dark, to carry shadows, to have an unconscious, and figure out how to approve of and be in relationship to those things. And the being stuck in purity consciousness is the shadow. That's the place that leads us astray. That's that influence of Saturn coming in and providing us with the narrow path. So let's really quickly, because I've already been talking for quite a bit, check in with the chart and see if there's anything else here that we want to say. So this is the chart of the eclipse, we see the eclipse here at 10 degrees Libra. It's only going to be visible, I think, in the Pacific Ocean. So it's not really falling over any particular land mass. So there's nothing really to point to country-wise in terms of where the path of the eclipse is. If you remember, the April 8th eclipse was over the United States. And so it brought our attention to things that are happening in the United States. This particular eclipse is going to be visible over the Pacific Ocean, which again falls back into the themes of like Pisces and Neptune, where we had our last eclipse. It also, I'm not going to get into that, never mind. And so we see that Black Moon Lilith is sitting on the eclipse to the degree. And so we've got a very Black Moon Lilith energy here, and Black Moon Lilith can really be tied back into the energy of Scorpio and the energy of Aquarius, and it's kind of like moniker of exile or not being very communal or relational in a sense. The other thing that this, with Black Moon Lilith sitting on the eclipse is that like it can bring up the places where we compromise our own self-authority, our own self-sovereignty. And I don't mean that in a hyper-independent way. I mean that in, like our own ability to hold our boundaries, get our needs met without having to do funny manipulative stuff. It can really highlight, who we are in relationship, what we're willing to do in relationship, where we're out of integrity in relationship, where we're bending too much. I was talking to my co-facilitator for the class that we teach together called Sky Dancer. It's a Venus Path class. And I was talking to her about compromise. And she's like, I really like the word negotiate better, which is, of course, such a Libran quality. It is the sign or home of the diplomat, like how we resolve things without needing to go to war, how we act civil, right? And I thought that was a really interesting thing to point out, that like compromise can be where we are setting down something important to us for the sake of others, whereas negotiate is like kind of how can I continue to have the things that are really important to me that feel like I'm abandoning or betraying myself if I don't hold on to them in a true way, and then still meet you where you are, right? And this is a real skill of relationship, which is a Libran quality. And then also, Lilith will show us who we become when we don't get our way in relationship, how the wounds of love have manifested for us. For instance, for me, I'm adopted, and my Lilith happens to be in Libra. So I've got a ton of like early relational wounds, and she's across from my moon, which in charts signifies our mother, right? And so you can see this kind of like Lilith theme with my mother and how that's run throughout my life, and this like real desire to be mothered and loved, and where that was broken, and then the types of behaviors and maladaptive coping skills that have come out of that wound, right? Like the things that what I will sacrifice to hold on to love that isn't healthy, things like that, And so, with Lilith being the mother of demons, I really love using that motif as a way of illustrating how we give birth to these kind of like inner demons through unconsciously reacting to what happens to us versus consciously. But this is the life path, right? We can see this in the astrology. Carl Jung illustrated this, the life path, and it is very important this happens. We talk about conditioning as though it's this bad thing, but no, a child is born, they discover an individuality, then they must be, um, inducted into a societal and civil role. This is important, for the human being. And so they become part of this larger collective, and the influences of the collective act on them. And then they have their Saturn return at 20, the end of their 20s, and thus begins a new process of individuation that tends to have its height between the ages of 40 and 44, when we have our Uranus opposition, and then finally our Chiron return is when it tends to be kind of like integrating and wrapping up. This is all rightful. I mean, this was all talked about in Dante's Inferno, in fact, this idea that we are sort of indoctrinated, and that there's a purpose for that, so that we can then separate. And life is all about, we know from Jeffrey Wolf Green, the inventor of evolutionary astrology. He talks about, life is all about the tension between separating and uniting forces. And so, we separate as little children, and we sort of have a kind of like first individuating experience, just as coming into the world in our own individual form, and then this desire for union again. And so that's like in middle school, where we just want to get along, we just want to belong with everybody. And then this constant tension between separating from the pack, being recognized as an individual, having our individuality and our unique gifts celebrated, and the need for belonging, right? Union. And so, this can also be highlighted during this eclipse, given that it's Libra. Like, who do I belong to? And how do I identify as a sovereign being inside of belonging? And this is to particular groups. This is not Aquarius energy, this is Libra energy, so it's more intimate, right? It's not a belonging inside of like a civic group per se, as much as it is like, how do I belong to my family, and how does my family allow me to be an individual? Or how do I allow myself to be an individual, and not like and to um and to buck the tradition or the culture of the family in order to um, show my individuality, which is kind of the other side of Libra, Aries, right? So I just want to take a look and see if anything else is happening during this eclipse that I really want to speak to. Oh, yes. So this eclipse happens to be, so we've got the eclipse here at 10 degrees Libra. The ruler of the eclipse is Venus. And Venus is in Scorpio. Scorpio's rulership is both Pluto and Mars. And we can see that the eclipse is squaring Mars in Cancer, which again is another reason why I think I'm getting so many texts from people saying, I feel the energy. Like it feels like something is shifting, something heavier is coming in. It's not just the change of seasons, like it's something more. Cancer rules the emotional body, and to have Mars here, and I believe Mars is just about to enter its kind of shadow phase of the retrograde. Um, Mars is an irritation in a sense to the emotional body, right? And squaring the eclipse means we are really going to feel it in the emotional body, right? And emotions and feelings are a little bit different, right? Feelings are something we can use to navigate with. Emotions are things that we can also use them as a compass, but they tend not to always be reflective of truth in a sense, in a way. They can be spurred on by like the pain body, right? And so it's really looking at, is the emotion I'm having a true reflection of my soul or my spirit, or is it being spurred on by my beliefs, right? Which is kind of the emotional pain body. Is it being spurred on by my thoughts? I think we're going to really get a good kind of induction into this framework as Mars is going to stay in Cancer and then go retrograde here, into this idea of like, we've had this whole movement within the spirituality community of like moving away from belief work and moving away from mental work and going into body work. But I think this is actually going to bring up the marriage of the two in terms of like how much our beliefs are really seated in our soma, in our body, in our emotions. It's certainly for me, as I've moved through these last, I don't know, 6 months since May or so, um, I've been having like a different kind of pain. And I think it's like a psychosomatic thing after having really looked into it. I think it's grief, and but it's also been showing me that like when I get scared of pain or like the neural pathways that are set up to deal with certain things in my life that are very fear-based, how those actually manifest in the physical, right? And so beliefs are an important thing in terms of keeping the emotional body healthy. And I think we'll really see the tension of that on this axis and during this eclipse portal and with Mars in Cancer. I mean, there's so much to say here. The other thing it brings up Mars in Cancer ruling the home, or as a country, ruling the like, our sense of patriotism, our allegiance to the domestic, right? And so there can be things within the home that get irritated or kind of like um jostled up or feel like they're you know being rubbed, right? Like there's something is stimulating or penetrating something that's been stagnant within like home dynamics or domestic policy. Of course, we're going to have an election this year. All of that stuff can come up with Mars in Cancer as well. And then when we have Mars like this in Cancer squaring an eclipse in Libra, it can certainly bring about like some, tension domestically, whether that be in the country or in the home. And then this is still opposing, Mars is still opposing Ceres in Capricorn, which I talked a little bit about in my last transmission. And this can be, it can talk to us. And on our last eclipse, we talked about Ceres and this opposition to Mars, and how it signified, this kind of like stirring up of like mother wounds, right? The other thing that I think it could be pointing here for us as well is this kind of like this motif of like moving between the underworld and the upper world and really looking at the places where we're shackled to the underworld, I mean, this is another thing that my co-facilitator and I talked about was there really is a part of me that like, when I'm hurt, when I'm wounded, when I feel emotionally unsure or I'm feeling afraid, is very comfortable in a cave, in not participating in life, which is really going to come up when we have the move of the nodal axis into Virgo and Pisces, the places where we escape versus where we participate. It's going to be a big theme. But there's this way that I can get into ruminating or find that I spend a lot of time thinking about or hiding from the wounded parts. And there's like these shackles, right? Like Persephone being in the underworld, these shackles to the underworld. And so, any place where we can initiate liberating ourselves from these shackles is important, because if we go back to what I was saying in the beginning, the entire point of that process of balancing the scales, justice, and then moving into judgment, having the eye of judgment on us, being killed by the judgment so that part of us can die and regenerate into a new form. That is all in service to liberation. And so this motif of kind of like cutting the shackles from the inner swamp creatures that live within us, the parts of us who hide when we're hurt or act out when we're hurt or self-sabotage when we're hurt, there is this ripe opportunity to unshackle ourselves from underworld themes. And so again, looking at like what kind of ritual can I do for myself, or we don't have to do a ritual. I like ritual because I believe that ritual truly is a way that we communicate with the universe. But even just throwing something up on the dashboard of our awareness will work. And so just looking at like, who do I become when the wounded parts of me are activated? Like in what ways have I given birth to little demons that come? And I don't mean demon. I mean like our little like inner demons, the demon of fear, the demon of, a particular trauma or wound. It's a part. I think parts work, IFS, not actual demons. But like how does that come out in me? And where can I liberate myself from that? Based on just simply having the consciousness around it. Like being conscious is such a liberation because it allows us to choose new ways of being. And then also we can look at the constellation of beliefs that hold that little, uh, the beliefs in the sense are the shackles, right? That's the thing that holds it in place. And so I believe that we're being asked to look at those things. And again, just as a reminder, when we're inside of eclipse energy, there is very little control that we have. It is a great time to look at the synchronicities, look at the signs, look at the, is there a pattern in the way that something is playing out? We've got Mercury right here conjunct the eclipse as well. So this eclipse has got, it's on the south node, it's conjunct Black Moon Lilith and Mercury at 11 degrees, so 1 degree difference. So it's a very close conjunction with Mercury. And Mercury gives us the ability to really look at these things. Like that's where we're getting the power. The messages are coming through. He's one of his motifs is the messenger of the gods. So he's able to pass messages between realms. And so we may feel like we're getting these magic or psychic hits or synchronicities coming in, or we're able to see a pattern emerge somewhere where we hadn't before. And that pattern itself has a message for us. That's all mercurial, and so it's a great time of alchemy, this consequence, this feeling the pressure on the coal of our body to turn us into a diamond, the kind of out of our control, strange things that are happening. They're all in service to the completion of what we may think of as like a karmic contract, where we needed the hardship to have a lesson, but we've learned the lesson, and so now we're ready for that atonement process, for the purification, and then the letting go of that thing, that plutonic thing. So I'm going to stop here because I have more transmissions to do this week and some work to do. But it was lovely to meet with you all, guys. And yeah, I will see you again soon. I love your shares and questions. Please send them in. If you have any questions about how the eclipse is hitting your chart, or have anything to add, I love that feedback. You can schedule appointments with me at my website, which will be listed below on the offerings tab. And yeah, I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.